So in this video, I'm going to talk about why I think the events mentioned in the Razor Arcana might actually be the reason why Muerta is getting released into the game in the first place. So without further ado, let's begin. So recently I made a video where I discussed how the Razor Arcana is littered with references towards the upcoming hero Muerta and talked about how and why these two heroes are connected to each other. And if you guys haven't watched that video, make sure to check it out if you want to know the details of exactly why I say this is the case. Links in the description. But anyways, the main gist of why these two heroes are connected to each other is because they used to have similar models back in Dota 1 and they are both referred as Revenants in Dota 1 and in Dota 2. And this combined with all of the other connections that we found between these two heroes in that previous video made me wonder if Muerta also used to be a warden of the Narrowmaze just like Razor. And this question led me down a really interesting path. You see, in her reveal trailer, Muerta claims that she is feared in both sides of the Phantom Veil. And in the previous videos I made about this hero, we found out that her Dota artifact lore states that she has a strong connection with the Phantom Veil. And according to Visage, the Narrowmaze is said to lead to the Phantom Veil. And on top of this, Razor occasionally talks about a place called the Underscape that he implies comes after passing the Narrowmaze. So although it's not really confirmed, my personal headcanon is that the Phantom Veil probably exists between the Narrowmaze and the Underscape. So I think while Razor is sort of like the warden who guards the Narrowmaze that takes in dead souls from the land of the living and leads them through the Phantom Veil, Muerta may have been the warden of the Underscape who guarded the other side of the Phantom Veil that led to the land of the dead. And this might be a possibility because the Razor Arcana have a couple of unused voice lines that seems to be directed towards Muerta, which indicates that these two heroes do know each other.
If you cannot choose a side, let Razor choose one for you. The time has come to accept your place in death. I'd always wanted to hunt you, but by the book, you've broken no laws.
So these voice lines seems to be directed towards Muerta. However, I couldn't help but notice that all of these voice lines kinda seem to contradict each other. Because here, Razor says that Muerta should choose which side of the Phantom Veil that she wants to be in, while this one implies that Muerta belongs in the land of the dead. Meanwhile, this one says that Razor wants to hunt Muerta, presumably because she is now in the land of the living. But in this same voice line, he also claims that she haven't broken any rules by being here, which is really weird. So what's really going on here? Well, I think this is because Razor, or more specifically the events mentioned in the Razor Arcana, is the reason why Muerta is getting released into the game in the first place. And to explain this, I gotta talk about the Razor Arcana lore. But just keep in mind that I'm not gonna go into the details of the Razor Arcana lore in this video, simply because that is not the main focus of this video. But all you need to know for the sake of this video is that the story of the Razor Arcana basically boils down to how Razor is rebelling against his masters, who kept him working in the Narrowmaze against his will like a slave for millennia. And now that Razor is free, he have essentially quit his duties in the Narrowmaze and have left it unguarded with only Visage looking over it. So I think Muerta might have used this opportunity to slip through the Phantom Veil and escape into the land of the living. And this is entirely possible because this particular Razor skin does state that there have been some who succeeded escaping the Narrowmaze, and I think Muerta might just be one of them. And a sign of her escape is actually shown in her trailer, because in one of my recent videos I made about Muerta, I explained how what we see here is a ofrenda, which in the Mexican culture is basically an altar that is created to honor a person who have died. And in that video I concluded that this might be Muerta's ofrenda, and this picture is actually depicting Muerta before she died. And since ofrendas are intended to guide or welcome the deceased to the altar on the Day of the Dead, we also assume that this ofrenda is probably what guided or summoned Muerta from beyond the Phantom Veil and into the mortal realm, as she is the one who appears near it. And these candles lighting up as she passes them by is meant to symbolize Muerta's arrival in the land of the living. But how exactly did she do it? Well, I think the key for her escape is actually this book that you can see here, because the fact that it is placed in Muerta's ofrenda shows that it probably holds some significance to her return. And in the previous video I mentioned, I intentionally avoided talking about this book because now is the time we should discuss this. Okay, I have reason to believe that this is actually the Book of the Dead. And yes, I do know that the colors don't really seem to match, but personally I think the green color that we see in this item's icon is actually an ambient glow effect, because you can see that these green particles coming out of it. Plus it's entirely possible that the green color may have been lost because of the poor lighting of this scene. And if you look closely, they do have a similar thickness, bindings and a bookmark like part hanging out of it, so they might actually be the same book. But even if you don't believe me, it's worth noting that the Book of the Dead was originally kept in the Underscape or the Narrowmaze, which is where Muerta seems to have come from, like I said earlier. And it is a tome that records the names of every soul that have ever died. And what's interesting is that Razor is the one who was tasked with the job of keeping this book updated, hence why in his voice lines he says stuff like this:
I scorch your name in the Book of the Dead.
So I think when Razer started his rebellion against his masters like mentioned in his Arcana law, he must have discarded this book because he essentially quit his job and he doesn't need it anymore. And I think Muerta may have picked up this book as she was escaping through the narrow maze. But now the question is, why did she bring it here? Well, to explain this, we have to talk about the Legends of the Monkey King comic, where we get to see that he once fought Razer in the narrow maze and managed to rip his name out of the Book of the Dead, which essentially allowed him to return to the land of the living as an immortal being, simply because his name is no longer in the list of people who are meant to die. So I think Muerta stole this book as she was escaping through the narrow maze because she also had the intentions of removing her own name from the Book of the Dead, just like how the Monkey King did. And this actually seems to be the case, because if you look at the lore of the Book of the Dead, it actually talks about the page that Monkey King ripped out. And although it's kinda hard to notice, it also mentions something about Muerta as well. Because if you look at Muerta's official reveal blog post and compare it with this item's lore, you can see that both of them mentions about a reckoning. And since we found out that Muerta and this book are linked to each other in this video, I'm pretty sure that this reckoning could be the same thing. And I kinda got the feeling that this reckoning might actually end up being an in-game event that is gonna be released along with Muerta's release into Dota 2. And upon further investigation, I actually found evidence that suggests that Muerta's reckoning could very well be an in-game event, and my initial hunch was right. And in fact, I found a lot of info about this reckoning event that I decided to make a separate video talking all about that topic in detail. But since the end date of the ongoing Tier 11 Battle Pass coincides with Muerta's early 2023 release date, there is a high chance that she will be released into the game on or after January 12th, which as you know is just a few days away from now. So just in case I won't be able to finish that video where I will talk about Muerta's reckoning event, I will give you guys a general overview of what I found. So first off, we know that this Muerta's event is probably going to be called the Reckoning, and this word basically means something along the lines of someone avenging or punishing others for their past mistakes or misdeeds. And this description perfectly lines up because Muerta does say that she has suffered the atrocities of the living in her reveal trailer. So judging by this, it's a pretty obvious guess that this reckoning event is gonna revolve around Muerta's in-game lore and how she will be exacting her revenge on the people who wronged her while she was still alive. And on top of that, I also found out that Muerta's Arcana might also be released along with this reckoning event. And there's actually a very slight chance that the glowing form that we see in her reveal trailer might actually end up being Muerta's Arcana. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. And finally, I also noticed that ever since Muerta's reveal trailer was released, there have been a significant increase of leaks about the rumored upcoming Valve game called Neon Prime. And this combined with the fact that this Neon Prime game apparently seems to have been co-created by Ice Frog himself, makes me think that Muerta's reckoning event and even her release will probably be linked to this Neon Prime game and possibly even the Great Confluence in one way or another. So as you can clearly see, there is a lot to uncover, hence why I said that this topic deserves its own separate video. So if I do manage to make a video covering all of that before Muerta's release, I will leave the links for that video or videos in the description box below so that you guys can check them out if you like. But anyways, with that aside, now let's get back to the topic of this video. So as you can see, Muerta's official reveal blog post and this item's lore both seems to mention about the same reckoning. And this combined with all of the other things that we found in this video proves once and for all that this book that we see in Muerta's reveal trailer really is the Book of the Dead, which also means that Muerta's escape into the land of the living and her release into the Dota 2 game as a playable hero is also connected to this item. And this fact alone would explain all of those contradicting voice lines that the Razor Arcana have towards Muerta, where he says that he wants to hunt Muerta for not being in the land of the dead. However, the reason why he can't drag her back to the narrow maze for being in the land of the living is because he clearly states that by the book, she has done nothing wrong, possibly alluding to the fact that Muerta's name is no longer in the Book of the Dead. So basically, the Book of the Dead is the key that allowed Muerta to solidify her stay in the land of the living. And if you guys remember, in one of my previous videos I made about Muerta, I did say that Muerta is under the curse of the Revenant's Brooch, which basically keeps her trapped between the veil of life and death. But now that curse is no longer a problem to Muerta, because although she is technically dead, her name not being in the Book of the Dead also makes her not dead at the same time, hence why she can freely switch between her material and ethereal forms like we see in her reveal trailer, and why she is getting released into the Dota 2 game as a playable hero in early 2023. And if all of this is true, it also explains why a seemingly random Arcana for Razer was released out of nowhere for the Tier 11 Battle Pass, because while the Phantom Assassin's persona released in this Battle Pass hinted about Muerta's upcoming release, the events mentioned in Razor Arcana's lore plays a significant role and is actually the reason why Muerta is getting released into the game in the first place. And this connection between these two heroes is really interesting as it goes both ways, because although on one side the release of the Razor Arcana seems to be the reason for Muerta's release, at the same time Muerta's release can also be seen as the reason for the release of the Razor Arcana as well, which sort of makes this like a chicken and egg mixed situation, where we don't really know which came first. But what I do know is that Razer is the perfect hero to welcome Muerta into Dota 2, because like I said in the previous video I made, both of them used to have very similar models back in Dota 1, and they are both the revenants of Dota 2. So yeah, that's it for this video guys. If you guys like this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this, and comment down below and let me know what you guys think about the things that I said in this video, because I would really like to know what you guys think. And also don't forget to check out the other videos I made about this upcoming hero Muerta, and I will leave the links for all of those videos and all of the other related videos to this video in the description box below, so that you guys can check them out if you like. And with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.